Alright, these fragrances launched 10 years ago, and they're still around. How do they smell? You're going to find out. This is a top 20 list coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yes, today we're talking about fragrances that launched 10 years ago that are still around and selling. But how good are these fragrances? So I've compiled a list of fragrances that launched 10 years ago, obviously. There's designers here in lots of niche, and I ranked this list. So the number 1 is my favorite, obviously. Number 20 is my least favorite when you compare it to everything else. You're going to find out all about these fragrances. Before I get to the fragrances though, if this is your first time tuning into the channel and you haven't subscribed, please click the subscribe button and also click the bell so you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. Do you have and wear any fragrances that launched 10, 20, 30 years ago? In their current formulations and things like that? Do let me know, put a comment down. Let's go ahead and get started with number 20, going to the house of Cartier. I initially thought this was discontinued, but it's on the Cartier website for the USA. I thought it was on the French website all along, but it's not. It was on the USA website. This is Declaration d'un Soir. This one right here. This is a kind of a flanker to the original Declaration, whereas the original was done by Jean-Claude Helena. This one was done by Mathilde Laurent, who is the in-house perfumer over at Cartier. You know, this version has not been my favorite of the Declarations. I like it. I don't love it. There's something in here that doesn't jive with me, even though I like the rose in here. So it's rose, sandalwood, black pepper, cardamom, cumin, nutmeg. It seems like they've brought over some of the spices that were in the original and added the rose. It's a lot of rose in here, but it is masculine rose for men. So Declaration d'un Soir, this is at number 20. Are you a fan of that fragrance? Do let me know. If you're a man and you also love to wear rose, of course that is a rose fragrance. Moving on to one of my least favorite JOVOY fragrances. This is La Joie Sans Fête, this one right here. I'm probably butchering the way you say that. This is the first tobacco boozy fragrance. I think it's boozy. Yeah, it's boozy, yeah, for sure. Tobacco boozy fragrance from JOVOY. They also have Pavillon Rouge. This to me is a very unique tobacco boozy fragrance in that there's something green and bitter running throughout the fragrance that almost throws me off a little bit, and I think it's coming from the Angelica, which is fairly prominent. So it's green and likely vegetal, like twigs and stems, against the tobacco and booziness. Does that make sense? The amberiness. It's tobacco, labdanum, patchouli, rum, dried fruits, Angelica, cumin, and patchouli. Seems like it would be an amazing fragrance. I just don't grab for it, but I think it's pretty solid and I think it has fans. What do you guys think? La Joie Sans Fête from the house of JOVOY. Do let me know. Moving on to number 18. This is Beach Walk that launched 10 years ago from the house of MAISON MARGIELA. So it launched in 2012. It's still going strong. I feel like this is one of the more popular fragrances from this house, and I feel like it's that beachy kind of skin scent type of a fragrance that people seem to love. This is Ylang-Ylang, coconut, musk, heliotrope, lemons, pink pepper, bergamot, benzoin, and cedar. So it has warm touches, it has tropical floral touches. It's supposed to smell like the skin after you've dipped into the sea, you've gone out, put suntan lotion on, and you've dried it under the sun. That skin, that smell that is on there is what you get with, or you're supposed to get with this particular fragrance. At least that's what I've read. It's a good fragrance, but obviously I like a lot of these other fragrances a lot more. So this is Beach Walk at number 18. Alright, moving on to the house of VIKTOR and ROLF. This is SPICEBOMB, this one right here. It's a pretty decent fragrance for men. I feel like if I was ranking it against other designer fragrances, it probably would rank higher. Against these fragrances though, it's lower, but I feel like it's definitely very spicy and tobacco-ish. So it features cinnamon, pink pepper, tobacco, leather, saffron, chili pepper, elemi, vetiver, and bergamot. It's definitely a solid release for men. I still do not own the extreme version or the intense version. I don't know why I keep putting it off. Do you guys recommend it? And are you a fan of SPICEBOMB? Do let me know. I think it's pretty solid. It does remind me of one of the Dior Privé's Spice Blend, very similar name too. I don't even know why they did that. Spice Bomb, Spice Blend. I'd go with the Spice Bomb and not spend the money on the Spice Blend. Moving on to the house of Maison Francis KURKDJIAN. One of my least favorites. I think it's solid. It's a solid release, but this is not one of my all-time favorite MFK fragrances. And of course, when I'm putting it against these other fragrances that came out in 2012, I much prefer the others. This is Amyris HOMME. So this, to me, is it's a very unique smell and features amyris along with cedar, tonka beans, mandarin, iris, rosemary, and saffron. Very unique smell, original, but then it also kind of reminds me a little bit of very mass fragrances. So there's that time I smell it and I go, oh my god, that smells really great. But then the more I smell it, like the more my nose gets on it, that it kind of blends in to become something very mass, like a designer fragrance. So I kind of have a love-hate relationship with this particular fragrance. But there are fans of it out there, and it's been around for 10 years. And in 2019, the Extrait de Parfum version launched. I do prefer that one a little more than this, but still, it's not one of my favorite creations from MFK. So I'm putting Amyris HOMME at number 16. Moving on to the house of SHAY in Blue. This is Blood Oranges, this one right here. So these are all fragrances that came out 10 years ago. I discovered this in 2018. It's a really delicious blood orange fragrance. It is lots of juicy blood orange, but to me this one also gets intense and more woody and also leathery when it dries down. But I feel like the blood orange in here is an overdose, and the other notes that come in are not as prominent or not the same amount of dosage. So in the end, you're really left with lots of oranges, and eventually it's musky, woody, leathery, and ambery when it dries down. So blood oranges at 15, I really love that. If I was ranking it in an orange fragrances video, that would be very high up the list, but of course in this list it's lower. Alright, moving on to the house of Hermes, and I remember when this fragrance first came out, I bought it like a year after it came out. This is from the house of Hermes, obviously. It's Voyage de Hermes Parfum. I actually have a tester here, and actually it's gotten really sticky. It's a pretty old bottle, but it still smells great to me. I actually recently featured it in a Cardamom fragrances video. I ranked it number 1. Sadly, it's down here against these other fragrances because, you know, I like the other fragrances a little more. This to me is like what cardamom smells like out of the jar. If you like the idea of cardamom, you might want to get your nose on this one. It's a freshie, but I prefer the parfum over the actual eau de toilette. Really love it because it really reminds me of cardamom. It smells fantastic. It's cardamom with juniper berries, sandalwood, spices, musk, lemons, tea, and rose. Super delicious. If you like cardamom, as I said, if you like fresh, spicy fragrances with cardamom, definitely check out Voyage de Hermes in the parfum version. Really great fragrance. I really love that, and I think it still smells great 10 years later. Moving on to the house of Robert Piguet. This is Casbah. So this has been around 10 years. I thought this was much older, but when I was doing my notes and research, turns out this came out 10 years ago. This, I believe, is created by Aurélien Guichard, who now has his brand Matière Première, which is now just launching here in the States. I think they're going to be exclusively at Saks and various smaller retailers. But I can see this being created by him because he created the Encens Suave for his own brand. But I like that one a little more because it's more gourmand, it's sweeter in comparison to this. But Casbah is basically a church in a bottle. It smells like church to me. Incense, Angelica, black pepper, nutmeg, vetiver, tobacco, cedar, and orris. Very powdery, smells like incense at church to me. I grew up Christian Orthodox. I smell that smell when I smell this. Transports me back to the church setting when the priests were going by with their, incense thing, whatever that is called. But anyway, Casbah at number 13. Moving on to number 12, going to the house of Amouage, it's Interlude Man. So we've got one incensey fragrance onto the other incensey fragrance. I do like this a little more. It's still, incense is not one of my favorite genres of fragrances to wear. I love the smell of it though. But I love the smell of it, but I never wanted to wear it as much. This one to me is very unique in that it does get ambery. It's eventually drying down to an amber. It's a dry amber. It's a spicy, smoky amber. And then it has that oregano note, which is very, very unique for a fragrance. And I love that contrast about this fragrance. Sometimes contrasts are really, really great. It really works here with this particular fragrance, and I like its darkness and things like that. It's a very peppery and oody as well. So this is Amouage Interlude Man. I can't believe it's been around for 10 years. I believe it's the most popular fragrance for Amouage. That's why they have flankers for it. They have the Black Iris version, they have the extract version. So a great fragrance. But again, I prefer the other ones that are coming after it a lot more, but definitely deserves to be at number 12. Somehow it's turned out that I have two fragrances from Tom Ford. The first of which is Cafe Rose. I remember I was just getting into reviewing fragrances when this had just launched. I started reviewing fragrances in 2012 on the first channel. That channel is no longer. So Cafe Rose to me is like, I don't know, it's like a coffee gourmand kind of a thing, but to me it's not necessarily uber gourmand as much. It's more a lot of other things going on with it, but it definitely features lots of rose, Turkish and Bulgarian. There's also May rose, there's coffee, there's incense, patchouli, sandalwood, amber, and black pepper. So to me the black pepper really is amped up, so it kind of competes with the coffee in here, so it kind of tones down the coffee vibe of this particular fragrance. It's still there, but to me once the coffee disappears, it's no longer a coffee rose fragrance. So I wanted a little more coffee, but it's still a pretty solid release. At one point this was a really great fragrance for me until I started like, you know, I want more coffee, and then of course Intense Cafe came out a couple of years after this. But this is, you know, solid release, 11 at Cafe Rose from Tom Ford. But moving on to the House of Byredo, this is Black Saffron, this one right here. So I pulled this out just before this video and I smelled it for the first time in a long time, and guess what? It reminds me of the DNA of this house. This house has a violet DNA, and I feel like there's violets in the DNA, or something about this particular fragrance and a lot of other Byredo fragrances. There's a violet, ozonic violet leaf touch to all of their fragrances, and it gives me a vibe of like they take the DNA and then add other notes kind of thing to build on a new fragrance. That's what I get with this. But either way, it's a great scent though. It's kind of a fresher take on something like a Tuscan leather or ombre leather. It's leather, saffron, raspberries, black violet, blonde woods, juniper berries, vetiver, pomelo. Black violet. Violets do come up a lot in this house. I think it's a violet driven house. Do you guys notice this? Do let me know. I mean, I'm not kidding. I noticed that there's a DNA floating around in this particular house, and as soon as I smelled it, not only did I get the saffron and the leather and the raspberries, but I got lots of violet and violet leaf. Anyway, Black Saffron at 10. It's a great scent. That's why it's at number 10. Moving on to the House of Orza El Legrand. This is Rêve d'Océan, and I still have my original bottle from like 2015. It's been a long time since I've had this fragrance. It's a great scent. This to me is also kind of like Encens Suave or Encens Suave from Matière Première, Vanagloria from what's the brand? Laboratorio Olfativo. So it's kind of like a lightly gourmandish take on incense fragrances, which I find to be a little easier to wear than straight in-your-face incense like Casbah, which is just all about church to me. This is incense, benzoin, elemi, pine tree, aldehydes, apopanax, cinnamon, labdanum, amber, tonka, gaiac wood, leather, and musk. Lots of stuff going on here, but you heard benzoin, which is sweet. Apopanax is sweet. Cinnamon is a warm spice. A labdanum is the amber, and then you got the amber and tonka. All of this stuff adds sweetness to the fragrance, and I love the way this smells. So Rêve d'Océan at number 9. Up next, going to the House of Xerjoff, it's Alexandria 2. So this is a very popular fragrance, and it has a great trail. It smells great on people when you smell it, when they're wearing it. I love it the way it smells off of me, and I like the combination of all the notes in here. It's like warm notes, aromatic notes, woods, oud, and vanilla and amber together. It's really delicious. But I do enjoy some of the other fragrances a lot more that are coming after this. But are you a fan of Alexandria 2, and do you enjoy it, and do you get compliments from it? A lot of people say they do, and I hear a lot about it from you guys when you add comments and say Alexandria 2, Alexandria 2. Whatever happened to Alexandria 1? I don't know anything about 1. I do have 3. I do prefer 2 more than 3. 3 seems a little more intense and a little more maybe oud forward. This one to me, oud is there, but to me a lot of other things are, you know, playing around with the oud to kind of like tone it down a little, if that makes sense. Alexandria 2 at number 8. This next one, this is a fragrance I've been talking a lot about on the channel, and I've never reviewed it, and I bought it quite a long time ago from JOVOY, and I like it because it's this kind of I should have not shaken it before I put it on camera because whatever is in here settles and you can see clear juice. But when you shake it, it's got this kind of shimmery stuff going on with it. But this to me is an amber floral fragrance with also kind of a beachy vibe to it. It's vanilla, ylang-ylang, coconut, musk, sandalwood, fruity notes. It just totally is very warm and beachy at the same time. So I wouldn't recommend this wearing at the beach, but then you can because it does have a little bit of a suntan lotiony vibe to it, and then also the coconuts and you know, the ylang-ylang to throw in a little more the tropicality to the fragrance. I think it's delicious. It deserves the number 7 here on this list. This is Ylang in Gold from the house of M. Mikolov at number 7. Next, going to the house of Rania J. It's Ombre Loup, this one right here. This was a love at first sniff for me. I actually bought a 50 ml bottle first, used it up, and then I bought a 100 ml. This to me is an amber that's very resinous. I experienced the resins in here. There's definitely lots of resins and also balsams. There's a very balsamic touch to it. And then also when I wear it, sometimes I get like a dough rising. Like if you ever have put together bread dough and you've left it for it to rise before you bake it, there's that kind of doughy smell to it, like yeasty. It comes to me in this particular fragrance, but it's labdanum, gaiac wood, vanilla, Peru balsam for a very labdanum forward amber fragrance with lots of balsams and resins. So it's Ombre Loup from the house of Rania J at number 6. Alright, up next at number 5, going to the house of Tom Ford. It's Noir. This one might be a little challenging for you guys to get. I believe it's no longer selling on Tom Ford's website here, but I know it's selling at like the UK and some other parts of the world that people, you know, like this fragrance a lot more than here. Here in the States, Noir Extreme, it's all about Noir Extreme, but you know, Noir, the original Noir, will like other parts of the world. And I really like this one because it started the Noir series of fragrances for men, and it's also got animalic notes. It's kind of musky and also very aromatic and spicy and resinous. So it's a beautiful fragrance. Really is very, very sexy actually, and I love that about it. And sadly it's not selling here, but I think it's one of the best designer fragrances for men. Kind of I don't know if I would call it a masterpiece, but very, very sexy with that patchouli and all the resins in here. Yeah, really, really nice. Really wonderful. Doesn't smell anything like Noir Extreme. It's got civet, so it definitely has an animalic undertone and very musky. You can say something kind of like Musk Ravageur, but in a different direction, because I get musk in here. I don't get much of the civet. It just creates, if there is any civet in here, it's creating a muskiness, almost like the Musk Ravageur musk. Anyway, this is a great scent. It's Tom Ford Noir at number 5. Alright, up next, going to the house of Tiziana Terenzi. It's Gold Rose Oud, this one right here. Are you familiar with this one? This is a really delicious fragrance. In fact, my mom is a big fan of this. My mom's sister is a big fan of this. I know many women that are a big fan of this. I know men who love this one. It's great, but you know, it does remind me of Black Oud and some other fragrances like that, but this to me is beast mode and I love that for it. It's Gold Rose Oud, it's oud, rose, patchouli, fir, sand, black pepper, honey, musk, amber, sandalwood. Basically an intense take on rose and oud. Really, really delicious. And then don't forget the patchouli, because this is the oud, rose, patchouli working beautifully together, creating magic. So this is Gold Rose Oud. Fantastic fragrance. Moving on to the house of Luban, it's Corrigan. Look at this. I'm putting this at number 3 because I find it to be a very unique fragrance. Really unique in the way it smells and with the notes they're using. This is very musky and milky. They don't use any milk here. It's kind of lactonic and caramelly and musky, like almost like the musk and Musk Ravageur, but different, a little more medicinal. To me, it's like lots of ambrette with leather, whiskey, musk, cognac, saffron, juniper, lavender, oud. You're going to experience booziness, but it's a different kind of boozy. It's not going to smell like other boozy fragrances. It's just the way the things are blended together to create this very unique smell. Very unique. Really interesting. And when you smell it, you get this kind of medicinal milk vibe in there. Really great fragrance. Love it. Corrigan at number 3. Absolutely love that fragrance. And then number 2, these are great fragrances now coming up. This is from the house of MDCI. This is Chypre Palatin. Great Chypre fragrance, focusing on Tolu Balsam. And once again here, we've got that kind of musky animalic undertone here as well with the Chypre, you know, stylings. This to me is a cheaper fragrance that doesn't really smell like other cheaper fragrances. It smells more ambery, more musky and resinous. I just love this one. Tolu Balsam, Labdanum, Oak Moss, Castoreum. And that Castoreum is giving us that muskiness. And of course, it's very balsamic from the Tolu. If you like the idea of Tolu from Ormond Jane, but more musky and a little more intense, definitely check this one out. It's a great scent. MDCI Chypre Palatin at number 2. And this is my number 1. It's got to be my number 1. I absolutely love this smell, and I still love the way it smells on me. Parfums de Marly's Herod. I discovered this in 2014, 2 years after it launched in 2012. Man, I loved it. It's not it's not a big fragrance. I was going to say it's not a wow fragrance. It is a wow fragrance for me still. It's not a big fragrance. To me, this is a little more subdued than something like Tobacco Vanille. And I'm not saying these smell alike. They smell different. I just love this fragrance. It just really does it for me. So it's tobacco, vanilla, cinnamon, osmanthus, and incense. Love it, and it deserves the number 1 spot. Anyway, those are 20 fragrances that launched 10 years ago and how they smell today. What are your thoughts on these fragrances? Are you a fan of them? Do you have them? Have you been wanting them? And are there any other fragrances that launched in 2012 that I forgot about? Maybe I don't own them, but I kind of compiled a list of 20. I didn't want to feature any bonuses today because it is the year focused. Yeah, these are all launched 10 years ago and still going strong. Anyway, let me know if you're fans of these, and let me know other fragrances that launched in 2012 that deserve to be on this list. Put a comment down so I can find out. Either way, guys, thanks so much for watching today. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.